everyone.
What would you do if you had my life? Work like me, had them stripes. Would you go hard just to have that ice? But a good fair trying to have that price. Any yo cooking about to add that spice. Nowadays dudes never had that fight. When it push bill, better burst your pipes. What would you do if you had my life? Work like me, had them stripes. Would you go hard just to have that ice? But a good fair trying to have that price. Any yo cooking about to add that spice. Nowadays dudes never had that fight. When it push bill, better burst your pipes.
The Tennis Gambling Podcast and the Sports Game Podcast Network is brought to you by the SGPN app. Get over Picks and Podcasts one location. Get the SGPN app free to download in the App Store. And welcome everyone to the Tennis Game Podcast here on the Sports Game Podcast Network. Currently early Saturday morning, around 12:30 a.m. Eastern Time on August 22nd. I'm Scott Reichel, once again here to break down some Cincinnati matches as it is semifinal time in Cincinnati. So a couple matches taking place on Saturday. Should be fun. We'll get into those two match previews in a few minutes. Before that, the reminder to support the show, like, subscribe on YouTube, also find the podcast audio only on Spotify or Apple. And you just leave a rating and review there. Like, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Also, check out the merch store. We have a lot of great tennis gambling podcast merchandise on the merch store. Sweatshirts, t-shirts, mugs, and hats. Different colors, very affordable. Think you'll like the options that we have. And speaking of the merch store, we have a nice discount happening right now, merch store wide, because football is right around the corner, which means it's time for a huge merch sale, 25% off everything in the merch store with the code football at checkout. So that includes the Tennis Gambling Podcast, that includes the MLB Gambling Podcast, every show on the network the promo code does apply to. So once again, check out the merch store, use code football at checkout for a quarter of everything in the SGPN merch store. Moving on into the recap of what happened for the quarterfinals. We had a great episode. In fact, we've won every single pick we've had so far in Cincinnati. Another sweep. We are 6-0 so far in the event. For the lock, we had Caboli plus 2.5 games against Paul at minus 118. I picked Caboli in 3. He won in 3. He looked awful in the first set. Then he ended up bouncing back. He came from one set back and ended up winning in 3. Nice job by him, as he eventually got the job done 6-3 and 6-4 in the final two sets. So nice win there. For the dog, we had Tiafoe moneyline against Musetti at plus 115. Still not sure why Musetti was favored. Tiafoe was really good against Musetti in the head-to-head in non-clay matches. He had won 3 straight non-clay meetings against Musetti, and he won in straight sets. So either way, a nice win for us for the lock and dog. We'll try to keep rolling here for the semis. And moving on to the recap in the grand scheme of the quarterfinals. So we're going to go a bit more in depth here for the matches. For the first couple of matches we ended up having on Thursday, Caboli ended up beating Paul. Said it before, Paul was off to a great start. Broke him in the first game of the match, ended up breaking him again. Caboli looked completely flat, no energy at all. And the secret was apparently some chocolate, because he had some M&Ms with him, which gave him a bit of a sugar boost, and he actually gave credit to the M&Ms after he ended up winning. So he had a bit of a sugar, I'd say, high there, and he ended up responding well, and he got the job done in 3. So nice job by him there. But point is, Caboli got the job done for the sake of the lock. For the dog, for the following match, we saw Fees, who ended up beating Tarante in straight sets. Thought Fees would roll. I ended up winning 6-3, 6-2. I thought straight sets was pretty straightforward. Tarante, look, good for him. He played well. Fees, though, was playing out of his mind. Ended up beating Dimonauer pretty comfortably, and he was able to keep his solid offensive tennis in form as he was able to beat Tarante in straight sets. Never in doubt, though, he only dropped 5 games in the entire match. A pretty big letdown for the final match of the Thursday card. Moving on to the Friday card, we ended up having a couple of interesting matches. 2 competitive ones, 1 straight set, though, and 1 was 3 sets. So Fritz ended up losing to Nakashima. Embarrassing choke job by Fritz, but either way, nice job by Nakashima to battle. Fritz lost the first set. He was actually serving out of his mind in the first set. In fact, it was one of the best serving sets he's probably ever had, and he still lost. So Fritz in the first set he ended up losing 4 second serve points and 3 first serve points. So he lost 7 points on serve in the entire set. He had 14 aces in one set. 14. He faced 0 break points, and he still lost the tie break 11-9. So that's kind of how Fritz started the match off, where he played very well, but did not play the big points well enough, and Nakashima found a way to win the first set tiebreak. He ended up having to fight off 1 set point. Nakashima, though, took an eternity to actually win the tiebreak. He was up 6-4, ended up taking 5 set points. Better late than never, finally converted, got the job done, courtesy of an error by Fritz on set point. Then Fritz came back and immediately broke him in the second set as he coasted to a nice, easy 6-4 win in the second set. Then Fritz broke Nakashima, and you figure, well, Nakashima hasn't broken him in the entire match. In fact, he hasn't had a break point in the entire match. So you figure Fritz is going to cruise to a nice and easy win in 3. And then Fritz totally fell apart. He turned full Zverev, where he ended up going up 3-2 and then lost the final 4 games. He went from not getting broken in the first 2.5 sets to getting broken in each of his last 2 service games. So a complete implosion by Fritz. Nice job by Nakashima as he came back and he won. But damn, that's a tough loss for Fritz, as he really had the match on his racket, was even up 30-love in the first service game he got broken in, and self-destructed. So nice job by Nakashima, who made the semis we saw in Montreal. Now he's back in the semis here in another 1,000 event. Great overall summer for Nakashima. We'll see if he can end up winning a title. Who knows? But either way, a nice job by Nakashima. We got the job done in 3 against Fritz. Then for the dog play, we had Tiafoe money line at plus, once again, just insane price to me. Tiafoe was plus 115. I didn't get it. Tiafoe has been good in the head-to-head against Musetti. Musetti also just didn't play anybody worth a damn in the entire tournament. Musetti ended up beating the likes of Faria and Zhang and Altmaier. Sure, I mean, not really any players worth a damn there. Tiafoe ended up beating Felix in straight sets, ended up beating Tien in 3, beat Sonego as well. Like, he beat 2 separate top 15 players. I mean, Felix is top 5 right now, and the fact is, I thought Tiafoe was in good form, and Tiafoe won. Now, he made it an adventure a little bit, as Tiafoe served for the match, got broken, then he immediately broke back, and then served it out to win. So Tiafoe didn't make it easy at the end. In fact, he actually stumbled a bit, but got the job done in the end as he ended up winning 7-6, 7-5. Real story of the match was the second serve for Musetti, which was horrendous. Nothing else to really add. Tiafoe was bullying the second serve points on Musetti's racket, and it just felt like Tiafoe was constantly getting ahead in these points because Musetti was rolling in these very slow second serves that got absolutely demolished, and Musetti ended up winning 43% of his second serve points. He hit 1 second serve in the first set tiebreak, which I think went 65 miles an hour, and Tiafoe, of course, destroyed it for an easy return winner, basically. But Musetti's second serve was just way too passive, and I thought Musetti, I know in general, he does stand far back on the baseline when he's actually returning serve, but Tiafoe, on the other side of the coin, is rolling in these 80-mile-per-hour second serves like he always does, and Musetti just wasn't doing enough to punish it. So Tiafoe was really just safe with the second serves because he knew that Cabolo was going to stand all the way back and really never come forward. And Tiafoe did the opposite. Every time Cabolo had a second serve, he stepped inside the baseline, he took it aggressively, and it paid off for him in some big points. But either way, Tiafoe got the job done as he ended up winning in straight sets. So a nice sweep for us for the lock and dog. Again, 3 of the last 4 episodes, 6-0 so far in the Cincinnati Lock and Dogs. We'll try to keep it rolling here for the semifinals. To recap, though, some other news that happened over the course of the last day or so. I talked about it earlier this week. There was serious line movement against Sinner in the U.S. Open in the prediction markets. And apparently all of the smoke led to a fire because Sinner officially is now out for the U.S. Open. The other news is that Alcaraz is back, so Sinner and Alcaraz ended up basically switching places. But either way, we saw Sinner win Wimbledon. He had a bit of a knee issue, and it seems like that's going to keep him out for the next couple of weeks as well. So Sinner ended up being about a minus 150 favorite in prediction markets and in sports books. Then the line went to about plus 300. There is definitely a different rule set for the actual futures for prediction markets and for sports books, which played maybe a little bit of a factor. Mainly, sportsbooks will void a future if the player doesn't play. Prediction markets do not. It is play it as it lies. If you bet on somebody and they immediately drop out of the event, you lose. So that is definitely why Sinner's odds went up so dramatically. However, at the same point, that tells you that somebody knew something about Sinner's knee issue, and the sportsbooks didn't even move the price down from 150 to maybe even like even money or plus 125. Because even if Sinner was going to play, clearly somebody knew the knee issue was a bigger deal than people were making it out to be. And yet the sportsbooks didn't move the price at all, and he ended up being ruled out. So whoever got into the no market on Sinner US Open at plus money initially made a lot of money. So keep that in mind. But somehow, so I don't really know how people get these inside information sources, but either way, people were aware that there was a pretty strong possibility, I guess, in hindsight, that Sinner was not going to play. And they just destroyed the prediction markets and made a bunch of money. So another incentive to bet on prediction markets is if you want to fade somebody, if they get injured and do not play, your bet still stands. So there you go. But Sinner now out for the U.S. Open. Alcaraz is back. We still haven't seen what the draw is going to be, obviously, because it does start about a week from now. But we'll see what happens. Pretty interesting. But Sinner dropping out is a surprise, but actually not that big of a surprise to me, because I brought it up with the prediction markets that clearly somebody knew something. And apparently their sources were very, very sharp. But anyway, Sinner's not going to be there. We'll see how the U.S. Open goes. But either way, time to get into the preview of the semifinals here in Cincinnati. Before we get into the breakdown of those matches, a reminder they're brought to you by our sponsor. Check out Clutch Parlays. They have predictions for every MLB, NFL, college football, and NBA game. A reminder, college football does start next week. So check that out. Week 0, we got some action. Predictions that were updated live during the games, which means we'll be getting some great prices and updated odds on every pitch, every basket, and every possession. Also, check out the leaderboard system. Very simple to use, very easy dashboard to follow as well. It's your one-stop shop for research and plus TV opportunities. Also, the best part, get a month free with the code SGPN at sign-up, clutchparlays.com, promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by Circa. Circa Sportsbooks giving away at least $30 million in prizes for this year's handicapping contest. You can check it out in Nevada, play from anywhere. Come out to Circa for contest weekend, August 27th, 29th. I will be there. If you want to find me, I'll be in Vegas on those exact dates. Also get a great sign-up deal for a hotel room, because if you end up going for contest weekend, get 15% off your stay at Circa with code HB15. Also, if you're going to play in Nevada, you only have to sign up in Nevada. You can play from anywhere, but you will need a proxy. So if you want to get a proxy at a footballcontest.com, use code HBN to get $50 off your proxy fees. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Game Podcast. Finished going through the recap of the quarterfinals. Time to move on into the breakdown of the semifinals. Moving on into the first match on the card for Saturday. First match we have Cobolli taking on Fees. Now, for the pricing, I thought initially, if I had to price it, I thought Fees would be like minus 160, minus 170. And the sportsbook said absolutely not. Fees is minus 247 or minus 250. Deal with it. And Cobolli's plus 220. For the set spread, Cobolli to win a set is minus 124. Fees to win in straight sets is plus 110. The over 2.5 sets is plus 152. For the spread, basically minus 3 or minus 3.5 in favor of Fees. And the over-under in games is set at 22 or 22.5. So you might be wondering, after Cobolli ended up beating Paul in 3 sets, after he ended up beating Hoder in the previous round, why is Fees this big of a favorite? And the main reason, Fees has owned him in the head-to-head. They've played in 5 sets. I will point out that one of the matches was the next-gen finals, so it was first to 4 games in each set instead of first to 6. However, Fees has won all 5 sets, and he's won each set by at least 2 games. So Cobolli has really never been competitive against Fees in the past. Now, next-gen finals was 3 years ago. Can't really use that. We know Cobolli did make the French Open final this year, but the last meeting was on clay, and Fees did win in straight sets. So Fees, we know in general, is a solid clay player as well. So they haven't faced off in this regular format 2 out of 3, first to 6 in a set, yet on hard court. But the 2 times they faced off, Fees dominated from start to finish, and Cobolli really never stood a chance. Now, the common theme we have seen so far in the event so far, Cobolli has been a marathon man, as Cobolli has gone to 3 sets in every single match of the event. Beat Kekmanovic, beat Blocks, ended up beating Hoder, and ended up beating Paul all in 3 sets. Fils, though, has been the opposite. Did drop a set to Leheshka, but he ended up winning that one in 3. Besides that, though, he's won every other match in straight sets. Beat Hanfman in straight sets, beat Leheshka in 3, beat de Minaur handily in straight sets, and beat Tarante in straight sets as well. Now, Tarante, we know in general, was basically an unknown, and he ended up having a monster run, kind of similar to the Ottmane run from last year. Ottmane did make the semis, but you get my point. Kind of an out-of-nowhere Cinderella story. Definitely a favorable draw for Fils in the quarterfinals. So Caboli, look, at the end of the day, Caboli has a lot of talent. We know, of course, he's also a serious wild card who can beat anybody, but can also lose to anybody, which is always the, I'd say, dilemma you have when picking his matches. We chose correctly against Paul, but the point is, Fils has definitely been the better player so far in the event, and he's been a lot more consistent. The fact is, Fils has been really rolling in his service games by comparison to Caboli. I mean, on top of the actual points won, which is drastically in favor of Fils, he's winning roughly 6% more first serve points and roughly 9% more second serve points. On top of that, Caboli's also had to face 29 break points, and Fils has only faced 10. So Fils definitely has the better serve in this match. He's also landing roughly 8% more first serves. So Caboli is really not a high percentage first server, and I do think the second serve can get him in a lot of trouble in this match. It has gotten into trouble in the past against Fils. I'll put it this way. Even though I thought initially that Fils would be a favorite, 240 and change is a lot more expensive than I thought, but I understand it. I would have made a case for Fils in general on the money line if it was the price that I thought it was going to be, because Caboli's a top 10 guy. He might be a top 5 guy, actually, in the next couple of weeks. So I figured that Fils would get some respect as the favorite, but not nearly this much respect. And unfortunately, I do think Fils is going to win, which puts me in a tough spot here because I do think Caboli is a talented player who can pull this off. Will he? I'm going to say no. I think Fils in general serving too well. I think he'll be able to really exploit the weak second serve that Caboli has. And if Caboli's first serve percentage is going to be below, let's say, 59%, it's around 55 all tournament, I think Fils is going to have just a feeding frenzy, kind of like what we saw in the Tiafoe match against Musetti, where he just dominated the second serve points and eventually got enough opportunities to win. I see the same thing happening here. The question is, will Caboli win a set? I'm going to say no, actually. I think Fils wins in straights. I think that Caboli can maybe make it interesting, but I'll go with Fils either way. I think Fils gets the job done. I'll save my favorite play in this match for later. But I didn't mind Fils to win the first set and the match at around minus 148. He's been a great first set player. Caboli has lost the first set repeatedly in the last couple of matches. I think Fils gets off to a good start. Caboli maybe starts off flat again, like he did against Paul. Who knows? But either way, give me Fils to win this one. I'll go Fils to win the first set and the match at minus 148 as my thought for this one. Moving on to the next matchup. Definitely the more competitive one. The two Americans going to battle it out. We have Nakashima taking on Tiafoe. Nakashima's favored in this one, minus 124. Tiafoe's plus 110. The over-under is at around 24.5 or 25. So basically the question is, are you expecting 2 or 3 sets? Now for the game spread, you have Nakashima minus 1 and Tiafoe plus 1. For the over 2.5 sets, I see around plus 125. The under is around minus 135. Now for the head-to-head, Tiafoe has owned Nakashima in the past. In fact, Tiafoe is 7-1 lifetime. Now, 7 of the 8 meetings were on hard court. The one clay meeting, Tiafoe did win, but he's still 6-1 lifetime against Nakashima. And they played earlier this year, and we saw Tiafoe beat Nakashima. They actually ended up playing in a hard court match that was in Acapulco, and Tiafoe did win in 3, lost the first set, came back, and he won. So, look, at the end of the day, Tiafoe's been in great form. We know he had surgery after he had to retire against Rinderknech in Canada. Showed up here, and he's been great. He's dropped 1 set in the entire event. Beat Sonego in straight sets, beat Tien in 3, beat Felix handily in straight sets, and beat Musetti in a 2-set war. Nakashima, we saw make the final in Canada, ended up losing to Shelton handily, and then he showed up here, and he's been good. Ended up beating Kovacevic in straight sets, beat Medvedev, fought off 3 match points and came back to win. Ended up beating Borges in 3, and beat Fritz when he was down a break in the 3rd set. and got the job done in 3 once again. So Tiafoe's had, I'd say, a tougher overall path, but not saying Nakashima hasn't beaten anybody, because beating Fritz and Medvedev are still solid wins. But Tiafoe, I do think, has had, in my opinion, a more impressive showing, at least based on eye test. Nakashima's played well, don't get me wrong, but I think that Tiafoe, having just not dropped many sets, you could argue might have an edge. I wonder when the fatigue might kick in for Nakashima, who had to play in Canada, immediately travel over, and he's had 3 straight 3-set marathons, while Tiafoe has dropped 1 set in the entire event. So based on that, not exactly. I'll put it this way. It's not that bad for Nakashima, though, counterpoint, because he had a day off in between the Borges match and the Fritz match, so that should help. But I do wonder if Nakashima should be favored when he's 1-7 lifetime against this opponent. Now, of course, we saw Tiafoe make the final here a couple years ago when he lost to Sinner, but he has proven that he can make the finals before. Nakashima, though, playing best tennis he's ever played in his career. It should be a very tough match. Having said that, do I think that Nakashima should be the favorite in this one? I'm really not that sure. I think it's basically a pick'em. I think it's going to be very close, but do I think Nakashima should be laying like 124 against the guy that he's beaten 1 time in 8 attempts? I'm going to say no. I'm going to say it should be a pick'em, like minus 110 apiece. I really don't see much separating these two guys. I'm going to take this match with the same approach that I had for the Musetti match, because it's basically the exact same, which is Tiafoe being a dog, even though he's been quite good in the head-to-head, and yet Tiafoe seems to be getting disrespected in every single round. So Tiafoe got the job done for us in the last episode as the dog. I'm going to run it back. Now, if Nakashima wins, would I be shocked? No. He's serving very well. He's definitely gotten better at the net. I do think that Nakashima can beat Tiafoe. I'm not saying that he can't. But do I think this price is accurate? In my opinion, no. I think Tiafoe has played very well. I think that he can beat Nakashima. And he's proven, historically speaking, even this year in Acapulco, it wasn't easy, but he proved that he definitely has Nakashima's number. And there's a plus sign next to his name. So based on that worst case scenario, I see a coin flip. And you're going to give me plus 115 or plus 110 as a coin flip. So I'm on Tiafoe in this one. I think Tiafoe should be arguably the favorite, or at least a pick'em against Nakashima. For price alone, I'm going to take it. So give me Tiafoe in this one. I don't mind the over. I think it will be close. I think it might go 3 sets. But Tiafoe in general has played very well post-surgery. I do think it is not a fluke that he's here. Nakashima fought off the 3 match points against Medvedev and then eventually did have a couple of other competitive matches. Fritz fell apart. Medvedev fell apart. Yes, Nakashima did a good job of not losing his composure and actually forcing those 2 guys to finish the job, and they couldn't. But Nakashima also has been basically gifted 9 lives in the event, and I think that Tiafoe might end up ending his run in this one. I'll go Tiafoe in 3 as my thoughts for this matchup. To wrap it up, though, for the breakdown of the semis in Cincinnati, time to move on into the lock and dog picks. Before we get into the lock and dog, a reminder they're brought to you by our sponsor. Check it out on Fantasy. They have spreads, money lines, totals, and parlays all available on the platform. Best Ball Mania, best way to play fantasy football. You have $15 million in prizes, $2 million for first place, and new customers play $5, 50 bonus funds. We sign like fantasy promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by Novig. So it's available basically nationwide, available in almost every state, including California, Texas, and New York. It's also great for reduced juice. Lots of great price available. I use a Novig all the time, either for this show, the Propcast. Lots of great prices available, so check that out. Also, download the app, get a great sign-up deal. Deposit $10, get $25 in trade credits. Check out Novig, promo code SGPN. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Game Podcast. Finished going through the preview of the semis in Cincinnati. Time to move on into the lock and dog picks. For the lock, I did say before, I think Fees will win the first set and the match. However, I'm going to go with the first set only as my lock. I'm going to go for Fees' first set spread, minus 1.5 games at minus 124. Fees has won all 5 career sets against Caboli. He won each of those sets by 2+ games. Fee has also been a great starter in these matches in Cincinnati. He has won the first set in 7 of his last 8 matches. He's covered this spread in 6 of those 7 first set wins. Caboli, though, is only 2-5 in his last 7 first sets. So we've seen Caboli rally in a bunch of matches, but he does start off flat in a pretty regular basis. Did so against Paul. He was really flat in that one. We'll see what happens, but Caboli in general has not been good against Fees. He has not been good in first sets against Paul, against Hoder, against blocks. He really just hasn't gotten the job done early. Against blocks, he actually did win 7-5 into the first set. But the last two, for example, Hoder and Paul, they won the first set against him and covered the spread. I think Fees might end up repeating history here, where he just jumps Caboli, dominates the Caboli second serve, and ends up winning. But I do think Caboli's recent first set, I'd say, trend is definitely, in my opinion, encouraging to fade him in the first set. So I'm going to go for Fees first set spread, minus 1.5 games and minus 124 as my lock. For the dog, I'm going back to Big Foe. Give me Foe money line at plus 110. Worst case scenario, it's a coin flip. You're going to give me plus money. I'm going to run it back like the Musetti match, kind of exactly the same word for word, bar for bar. Tiafoe, though, 7-1 lifetime against Nakashima, 6-1 straight up on hard court. Yes, Nakashima has played his best tennis over the last couple of weeks. However, Tiafoe in general is still a good returner, still has a pretty solid amount of variety, came to the net a lot against Musetti, but Nakashima, we know in general, still not exactly a good returner. I think Tiafoe will generate some breakpoint chances. I think he'll be able to just showcase his overall skill set, which has frustrated Nakashima in the past. I like how Tiafoe was moving Musetti around the court from side to side. I can see him doing the same thing to Nakashima. Force did some running passing shots, come forward, put some volleys away, get the job done. But Tiafoe's only lost one set in the entire tournament. Nakashima's had 3 straight marathons. And I do wonder if fatigue will play a factor at some point as the match progresses. But Tiafoe, 7-1 lifetime, and I'm getting plus 110. I think the odds are too good to pass up on, so I'm going to take Tiafoe as my dog for the show. So once again, the lock and dog picks. The lock's going to be on Fees first set spread, minus 1.5 games, minus 124. For the dog, I'm going to go with Tiafoe money line at plus 110. Back once again for the final in Cincinnati, probably tomorrow.